is Julian Midville. I'm the vice chair, but acting as chair due to Cynthia Grass's absence today. I'll call the meeting to order, 6:12 p.m. First thing that we have is approval of the minutes of June 26, 2023. So by unanimous consent, correct? Yeah.
If you have a question about the minutes.
Yeah, if you have a question, yeah.
This is Tom, and I have a question about the minutes as far as I read in there that there were no comments on the ITS. So is it pretty much pretty straightforward with the type of ITS is, or was there any significance or comment on it?
I think that's maybe for the staff, but my thinking is that there wasn't much discussion over the ITS there, and it went through relatively quickly.
That's accurate.
And so by unanimous consent, or if there's no objection, then we'll adopt the minutes of June meeting. And then now moving to, with unanimous consent, adopting minutes for our September meeting. If there's anyone have any questions about it? Okay. Great. Well, in that case, without objection, we'll adopt the September meeting minutes. Do we have any public comment?
There is no one online and no extra people here, so no.
Well, in that case, we will go right to regular business. The one item that we have there is the transportation element periodic updates presented by Thomas Aldrich.
All right, thanks so much everybody for being here. Appreciate your time. I will be going through the transportation element periodic update. So first I'll just provide some background information. I'll provide some background information on the comprehensive plan, which is the broader document the transportation element is within. Provide some history on that. Talk about like why it is that we're updating this, and then we'll get into the meat of like what we're doing here today. So in addition to the information that was provided, I also printed out a track changes version so we can walk through that as well, if that's helpful. So again, we're going to be reviewing the proposed amendments to the transportation element, and then I'll ask the board a couple questions. So as I'm going through this, please just sort of consider these in the back of your mind, and we will come through later and hopefully get some good feedback from you all. So first question is, does the board have any feedback on the proposed updates? Do the proposed goals and policies address Issaquah's transportation needs? And are there topics not addressed in the proposed goals and policies for transportation? So to talk about the comprehensive plan requires me to sort of go back a little bit. So to provide some context, the state requires that cities, counties, and regions plan for growth. So in 1990, the state of Washington was seeing a lot of growth happening, and there was not cohesive planning policies to sort of guide growth. So 1990, the state required planning for growth, and the region, the county, and Issaquah, we all are aligned with that. And so over the years, the 1990 Growth Management Act has been updated to sort of remain current with the needs of the state, but that's sort of just a little bit of background information. So we are required by the state to update our comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan is providing a framework for regional growth management. It requires that counties also consider growth There's several requirements that are within that I'll get into. And it also requires that cities develop their own comprehensive plan. So this yellow area is sort of what we're looking at. So there's a cohesive line between the state, the region, the county, and local government. And we're really looking at, there's like 14 things that we look at, but generally speaking, it's about population growth, sprawl, and quality of life are some of the topics that are covered within this. So today we're focused on mobility. This is one of the chapters of the comprehensive plan. So in here, there's all these chapters that we call elements. So the mobility or transportation element is what we're focused on today. Within this, there's several topics. So within the comprehensive plan, there's multiple topics. Mobility is what we're focused on. There's two of these that the city currently tracks that are not required by the state. So human services and cultural element are two that the city finds are important but not required. So there is some flexibility with how we do this. The city, we act independently, so we want to have our own stamp on how we carry this forward. Many cities have their own additional elements that they track as well. But mobility is one of the required elements that we are supposed to track. And so today we'll be talking about specifically the periodic update of the transportation element. There's two types of updates that we could do. We tend to do annual updates for some of the elements. So some of you may recall in 2020, we updated the comprehensive plan when we implemented the mobility master plan. So this was something that we did on our own that was not required, but we do want to make sure that the transportation element is consistent with how we're doing as a community. We don't want to wait too long to update it so that the comprehensive plan is sort of out of line with how the community is growing and all that. We are required every 10 years to do a periodic update. So that's why we're here today. This is a required update, but again, we did just update the transportation element not too long ago. So we can sort of think of this update as being more minor of a lift because we recently updated it. And this update is really just sort of coordinating with recent plans that we've put through. So again, mobility master plan, we did that 3 years ago. Recently, we've updated the street standards, which provides engineering guidance for the design of roads. So that was recently updated. I want to make sure that our document is consistent with that. We also recently did some land use code updates also this year, and we have some plans in development. So we're constantly trying to improve on the policies and regulations that we have. So just making sure that our overarching goals are aligned with that. So that's sort of the importance of this, of what we're doing today. Just another visual to hammer this home. So the comprehensive plan provides a vision, goals, and policies for how we want to provide transportation in the community. And so the goals are providing the high-level intent of the transportation system, and policies are guiding the implementation of the goals. And so functional plans like the mobility master plan are really implementing the goals and policies of the transportation element. And mobility master plan includes strategies, actions, and resources. So there's funding associated with the actions and the strategies that we're developing to implement the policies are all sort of making sure that anything that we say we want to do, just in a general sense, will be implemented, and there's like actions behind it. And this, again, is sort of similar. It's just showing goals and policies from the comprehensive plan are plugged into the functional plans. So we're doing technical analysis, we're engaging with the community, we're we have specific actions, strategies, and funding associated with the goals and policies that we put together. So with all that, thank you for bearing with me. I would like to walk through the goals and policies that we're proposing to update. And I can just start with what we're planning to move. So I should have highlighted this earlier. The environmental element, I'll use my cursor here. Environmental element is a new element this year. It's receiving policies from other elements because it was not previously required. So the mobility element will be giving 3 policies to the environmental element. So these 3 policies are existing. We're also proposing amending them to be more actionable. But just, I guess, my first 3 that I'm here to get feedback on are on these 3. So these are at the end. I gave you guys a piece of paper with track changes. These are towards the end. So these are sorry. These are in the first section, section B.
Section what?
Section B. So this is climate change and quality of life. So that's going to be like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The 3rd page. So the first 3, in addition to moving them to the environmental element, so outside of the transportation element, the goal is to just make these more actionable. So previously, we talked about achieving a 15% increase, but we didn't specify what that number actually was. So knowing a baseline is important. So we just wanted to make sure that this one was going to be, yes.
Sorry. So question on that, where it's achieve 50% SOB, still talking about vehicles, to me, that's more transportation than environmental, as opposed to that might be quantified as the pollution production from vehicles and other things that would be more environmental. It's kind of consistent with the MT on the next one. And the 3rd one where it's reducing the emissions, to me, that's more of a direct environmental type of thing that can be measured.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. I could see it both ways. It initially was in the transportation element. However, the environmental element, this would be in an area that is specific to greenhouse gas reductions. And a lot of the intents of tracking these data is for the reasons of greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So I can see it both ways, but the direction that we've been given is to move it into the environmental element. But I definitely hear it, yeah.
So I wonder if there's a way that we can keep still think on the transportation side, we're still talking about vehicles, and if there's a way that keeps along this in the transportation and on the environmental side, whether that's a reduction of emissions because of reduction of SOEs and addition of hybrid or cars. It's almost like, but you can't see it both ways. If you have on the transportation talking about vehicles only, the other side is alternative vehicles and reducing the number of vehicles. There's a direct relationship to the.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I think ultimately we want to reduce redundancies through this whole doc. It's all going in the same document, and we will be tracking it. It's just whether or not it lies in this document or another. So I definitely hear you. We'll record that as like a comment, but that's sort of where staff is coming from on that. But I understand. Yeah. I'll ask the chair, should we maybe roll through all these and then get feedback at the end, or how would you like to break this up?
I think we can
go slide by slide, or if that's easier.
Yeah,
or...
I think we can go slide by slide and ask for input after every slide.
Okay.
A little more manageable.
Sure, okay,
And
sounds
then
good.
at the end, we can do like a.
Do a recap, okay, sounds good, great. So I will maybe stop here on this slide and yeah, so maybe just get an initial gut check. So one of the things we heard was about keeping it here, but maybe talking about the intent of just a mode shift generally, but not as it relates to greenhouse gas emissions, right? Another thing was related to, yeah, so yeah, any other feedback on this slide?
For the first policy, achieve 50% single occupancy vehicle mode share by 2030.
Yeah.
So how are you comparing that 50%? Is that from, where is that?
Yeah,
What
so
is the
I
baseline?
do apologize. So this slide itself is shorthand for the document that we have. So if we go, I don't have the attachment in front of me here, but if you go to attachment B in the packet, that really talks about the specifics here. Do you want to maybe, I guess you're tied up because that's your computer.
I know, it's all right.
Yeah. Here.
Oh,
I'm gonna go around here, do this. Let's put a pin in that and then we'll come back. Does that work? Could you maybe grab the attachment B?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, it's in the presentation.
yeah,
unfortunately, my computer is in the shop.
it's okay.
Halfway.
I had a question about the mode share breakdown. So for the single, it specifies, we own 50% single occupancy vehicle mode share. Is there did you consider also adding on like the other mode shares? Like, we want maybe 50%, and then we want to make the biking mode share increase from like, I don't know what it is right now, but increase it to 6% or something like that, and transit 20%.
That's sort of all, yeah. That's sort of all implied within the other 50%. So
Yeah.
if it's 50% single occupancy vehicle, I believe the baseline is 2017, if I remember correctly. It's in the yeah, so it's going to be towards the end of that document, at the very end. Yes. Yep. So yeah, this is all shorthand for.
Oh, you know what? Let's. Can you stop sharing so that
Oh,
I
yes.
don't know what is being picked up
Okay.
by Teams versus what's on
Yeah.
TV. Thank you. So that's all.
Oh, great. Sounds good. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
So again, so this is that first part. So achieve a 15% increase in non-drive alone mode share from 2017 levels by 2030. And so a 15% increase in non-drive alone, I looked it up because it wasn't apparent. We are currently at 65% as of 2017. So condensing this statement into a shorter statement is to say achieving a 50% single occupancy vehicle mode share by 2030. So it's equivalent, but it actually tells you what the number is, if that makes sense. So if we were at 65
In 2017.
in 2017, and we want to be at 50, I'm just saying we should be at 50. Just making it a little bit shorter.
And wouldn't you, so wouldn't you use a real number instead of a percentage?
Percentage is sort of what is used because population grows. So to have a real number is kind of more difficult, but to say that we want half of people is more achievable.
this is on like all trips taken through this, because I know like, I guess like the statistic of like how many people are just kind of like passing through Issaquah, right, who like work here and don't live here, and like, I don't have a question about this, but like, that's just kind of the back of my mind right now.
Yeah. Yeah, this is all trips. Yeah, all trips within Issaquah. It's a little bit of a squishy number, but this is consistent with how we all do it. It's incredibly difficult to get that hard number. You're using big data to sort of get that number, but we do have sources that sort of will give us a rough estimate, and that's sort of what we're going for. So
so they track it by counting traffics on the roads?
Yeah, there's a variety of ways, but lots of it is sort of there's indirect ways to do it with like cell phone data. There's also like there are travel demand models that are using modeling assumptions to get that information, and then they benchmark it with real data that they collect. So it gets very complicated very quickly, but as far as what we're focused on,
we're just focused on that 50%.
We are not changing this at all. I'm just proposing that we give it a hard and fast number instead of a number that nobody would know what it is, if that makes sense.
I have a question about the second policy. Why is it per capita vehicle miles traveled rather than overall vehicle miles?
It should have been written as per capita. That's the consistent measure. It just wasn't before. Yeah. And then the third one is pretty simple. I'm just trying to simplify the way it was written a little bit. And then I'm also proposing adding electric bikes, which was not currently in the original document, but would also lead to reduced greenhouse gas emissions, and would be like another sustainable alternative to driving. So.
Any questions or feedback?
Okay. Great.
Move on to the next set.
And I cycled through again, so I will now present.
Either of you want a muffin?
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Cookies over.
So the second set, these are new policies. So this second set, and these would go in the existing Goal B category. So let's see. B1 and 2 are new policies aligning with state and countywide goal and directives that we've been given. And then B3 is new policies to ensure that our existing commute trip reduction program continues to be aligned with city's needs. So just to provide a little bit more information, the first and second are just sort of as we think about how we're aligning with countywide and regional and state policies and directives, these are aligning with that. And then this third one, we currently have a program that we are not updating regularly. So it's fallen a little bit behind in terms of being updated. So we would like to formalize that just to say that we need to take a look at this every 5 years to make sure it's up to date.
Is that similar to what other cities are doing also, like a 5-year plan?
5 years was what, for staff, that's what seemed to be a good fit for this community. We are experiencing some growth now, and we will be especially within 5 years. So 5 years has a ring to it. It seemed to be a good fit. Open to suggestions if we should change that. But I think 5 years gives us enough time to know specifically how we're operating. It really gets at a lot of the major employers in the area. So our current program has some information on employment numbers that are older. We're always tracking how we're doing in terms of commuter production. It's not that we're not doing it, but the document itself is a little bit old. So I think at this point, in the next couple of years, updating the document wouldn't change a whole lot, but in 5 years, we could experience more growth, and it would be good to update the document regularly to make sure that, yeah.
How much does updating it factor into like being competitive for grants?
It doesn't, that I'm aware of, yeah. It's more about aligning it with how the community is doing. And a lot of it is related to the business community and making sure that larger businesses have alternative ways to get to work instead of driving. So it's.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
I'm on camera. So John Larson, friend. So as the CTR program coordinator, CTR is a state law, like it's required for any company with over 100 employees at a given work site. We have 8 of those in our city, I think, right? And actually, as a point of interest, we are required to update our program, basically report every 4 years. So that might, I don't know if that factors into this at all, but I just want to point that.
You're saying the state law requires you to update it every 4 years? Yes, yeah, basically. Or at least the administrators do. I don't remember if it's in the state law, but that's how.
Maybe wrong, but I thought part of the state law was what you were saying is the companies that are over 100 employees have to have a production plan.
Correct.
To achieve a certain number of trips reduction. Carpooling, I think.
Or at least in the law, it says good faith effort in quotations.
Could you talk more about what goes into a typical evaluation?
That's a great question, because we haven't really done that here at the city level, so that's why we're adding it.
The document itself is very old.
Yeah, since I think you're the person, the point person for that.
Yeah.
I guess like, not to put you on the spot, but does that feel doable given like any other responsibilities that you have? Or is that like, we would maybe have to add another FTE or something?
Not at this point, I don't think. 8 companies is very manageable. Even I think I work maybe a third of my job on it. So yeah, I think that's.
Now, I will say statewide commuter production is becoming more and more important. It's a very widely used program, and it's very important that we keep up to date on it. Any other feedback on these 3? Okay. All right, we will move on to multimodal balance system. So this is goal C. There are 2 new policies for you to consider. C4, this is a new proposal based on feedback from the TAB and Mobility and Infrastructure Committee. Several months ago, I brought this, and there was feedback about potentially pursuing micromobility partnerships or investments in the future. So this is a direct result from that. And then C5, this is a new proposal based on what we've heard so far from the transit study. There's an importance of adopting land use policies and multimodal connections to a potential new station. So given that this document is a 20-year document, we're sort of thinking ahead about what we could see with a new light rail station. We will need to support it with land use and connections to the station. So we don't have any information on where that station will be, but we just want to like sort of tee it up for future discussions by adding it to the document.
So with goal C, with both of these, I mean, I guess C is pretty sharpened, but the light rail one, particularly it's talking about the support of land use. Since it is a 20-year plan, it might not be good to be too prescriptive about what that means, but I do think supportive land use is still a little bit vague, too vague. And so I feel like it might be useful to sharpen the language there and say, like, you know, we need an actual walkable neighborhood like right next to it, or some walkable retail right next to it, right? So,
yeah. I heard you saying. I think the vagueness is, like you said, it's sort of built into why we're doing that. The implementation documents that we have associated with it, like the transit study or the mobility master plan, that's where you would actually hash out like the specifics on how you would get there. So I think just in general, like this policy is meant to be pretty broad. Just like we're not saying like pursuing micromobility partnerships with a specific provider. We just want to like set the stage so that when we do go down that line, we can say that in the transportation element, we call for this, and the actual way that we will implement it will be decided as we get there. We don't really want to like, we don't want to say exactly how we want to do it because the conditions might change between now and 20 years from now. So it's, I think it's important to be flexible with how we're doing this, while also acknowledging that like it's important that we do it right, but we just don't know what the right approach is yet.
In that vein, like, is it typical to call out Sound Transit by name? And I know in a couple of these it says County Metro. Like, could you make it so this is like my legislative brain here, but you can't always call out specific organizations within the text of the law, like for like a budget proviso, you have to like basically narrowly tailor the description to so that it would like only fit that specific thing. So it is the thing, but you can't name it by the name. It's silly, you know.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Like, I don't get, so all that is to say basically, like, if Sound Transit like rebrands in 10 years, where it's the same entity, but they just are calling themselves something different. And like, I know that's really my new change, but it would then make this outdated, right? Like, is that where, I don't know if that's just like standard practice.
Yeah,
you call it by name.
Yeah, you make a really great point. And just more background information, we're going to be running all these through legal to make sure that this is fine. But you make a really great point. So we will definitely note that in case that is a concern. I am not a lawyer, so I did not. Yeah, yeah, that's a really great point, though.
Any comments?
When you say land use, does that include considering the topography where you hold things like high altitudes or low altitudes, like floodplains and stuff like that?
Yeah, in a way, that's all incorporated. I guess sort of what this is getting at is it's more about like what is built in the area, but like as an adjacent thing, like that would be considered. There are land use policies that are related to environmental sort of things. This one is more directed at like within an area adjacent to transit, making sure that there's enough jobs, housing that would actually use said transit. So it's more about supporting light rail through like just like making it a viable option to actually have light rail there. You wouldn't cite light rail in an area that was like an endangered like environmental area. So that's all sort of related, but This one is more specific to like sort of the density in the housing and the jobs kind of idea.
So this was kind of what I was talking about, because our idea of supportive land use might change in 20 years.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's still important to capture our intent of like, and putting that into language here, like saying there have to be jobs near it, there have to be housing units near it. But we're not specifying how many in this overarching document, but we're just saying that there has to be a sufficient number of jobs and housing near the light rail station that can serve. So
Yeah,
that's kind of like how I think it should be.
okay, yeah.
I'm not sure what others folks think.
Great, okay, we'll keep moving on. Thank you. So goal D, this is really just adding a couple words and removing a couple words. So I'll start with removing. We currently have a statement that is inconsistent with state law, so we want to remove that. That seems pretty straightforward. And the second part is we had currently in the document, it says transit stations, and this is in relation to a sidewalk tiering system. So the way that we are prioritizing where sidewalks are built, we are currently prioritizing near transit stations. So an example is, over here at the park and ride. So that's a station versus adding transit stop, which would be all bus stops currently. So this is just adding more emphasis on bus stops in addition to stations.
And that's the language change from hospitals to transit stops, specific facilities.
Yeah.
And that way stop could either be what the bus fill out, or transit center, or curb pickup.
Yeah. Okay, I'll keep moving on. Thank you. Goal E, just adding additional language talking about the location of potential light rail station, which we're not aware of, but just sort of, again, kind of like what we were talking about with, I believe it was like the bike facilities, just teeing it up for future conversations so that we can connect the future light rail station with the bike network.
Is there, I have a question about this, is there anything kind of related? Do you think there's anything needed, like, the walking element, saying like, we need sidewalks within a quarter mile of transit stops? Is there a way to put that through here as well?
Yeah, so that would be like more of a specific action item that we would cover in the mobility master plan. So like that very specific thing. That's a great comment though. That would be just an implementation kind of thing. Yeah. But it sounds like there's emphasis on walk shed sort of connections to transit. Yeah, we can certainly add that to the mobility master plan as a consideration. Yeah.
Any additional comments or questions for this one?
Next one is transit. So with this one, this is F section. Really just amending it to add more actions. So this is sort of spelling out some things that we would like to see as we prepare for high capacity transit. These are some general things that we could be looking at. So these are just like the action steps that we're proposing. Again, with F2, adding language to anticipate light rail and other transit service that would connect to light rail. So just sort of thinking about that in the 20-year window that this document is all about. F4 is, again, this is an F4 and F5 are new. So these are establishing partnerships. These are sort of formalizing relationships that we've been developing for a long time, but especially during the transit study, we've been formalizing these partnerships. In collaborating with King County Metro and Sound Transit, there's a lot of ways that staff can enhance transit options, access, and reliability. One example is our new program, our new shuttle program. So that's super exciting. That was a partnership with Metro and the city. So this is sort of formalizing those ways that we can think about other options for how to get transit in the community. If there's some access improvements we can do, or if there's reliability issues that the city can help out with. So that is F4. And then F5 is kind of more specific to things that the city can control with transit. So we would like to start measuring transit performance so that we can see how we're doing, and if there's any ways that we can improve it on our end. This is consistent with state requirements, so this is sort of just formalizing that kind of thing.
I'll jump in for F1. Can we transit speed, reliability, and access? Reliability is kind of similar to it, but can we add frequency as well?
So this is for F4?
No, F1. Enhance transit speed, frequency, reliability, and access. And access is related to accessibility, right? That's the idea there.
Yes, yeah. So sorry, speed, reliability, access, and you said frequency. Okay.
Any other comments?
You're talking about frequency of service?
Yeah, frequency of service. Okay. Other comments?
I was just curious how you would measure the performance metrics in F5. So supposedly that's already been developed, a way to measure that?
It has not. So there are standard measurements. We have yet to determine what our measurements would be. So that's sort of that would be like hashed out at a later date. But just generally, this document has an overarching statement saying we want to collect metrics so that we can monitor how we're doing, how transit is doing, and if there's anything that the city can do to help out. Understanding that we don't provide transit, but there's certainly things that we can do to sort of facilitate it. So those metrics that the city has control over, we haven't formally developed yet, but that will be something that we will be doing.
But you'll need more employees to do that, or?
It's not much of a lift. I mean, depending on what data you're trying to track. So I think it'd be important to track data that is achievable and like it's not going to be too crazy. We do already have a great working relationship with our transit providers. They do have full-time data staff that help out with these requests. So it's really just depending on what the metric you're trying to track, it can be a very simple ask, but just knowing where you're at is super important for making decisions. So this is just formalizing that. Cool. Just keep moving on then. Goal G, this is auto travel. For G3, we're proposing changing the policy language to be more in line with what we have heard with Title 18 land use code updates. So I think most of you were here for those conversations, but just to recap, there was a huge emphasis on parking during the Title 18 land use code updates. A lot of it was related to development required parking. And council is very interested in doing a parking study to right-size parking policies. So this policy change in the comprehensive plan is really sort of formalizing what we've heard through that process. And the original statement was related to a very specific part of the city. And then it talked about like general statements about different communities. We're interested in looking at the entire city and right-sizing parking policies. So this one is just, the proposal is really just to update the language based on what we've heard over the long Title 18 process.
So this is basically not really, it's not really dictating much. It's just saying, it's just going to the Title 18 policy. Or, yeah.
This one is really saying ensure that parking is right-sized, and then the actions that would come out of that would likely be the parking study, and then anything that is recommended through that. So it's kind of hard because like this is really supposed to be like a broad statement, and I think as we right-size parking, many things could come out of that. Many actions that would be determined from other studies or through the implementation of the mobility master plan or other documents. But this is really just saying, in general, we want to make sure that parking is adequate for our needs.
And then the right size is also saying we can also like a maximum, or we can, yeah.
That could be a recommendation of future actions. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So question on the policy side, could we have, so a certain business might be 50 spots. This is from the policy side, we would say that anything over a certain size, it's a double decking parking, and then it would reduce the physical surface size of it. That way reducing the massive parking lots.
Yeah.
Not necessarily have to have cost, because it's better by 5%.
Right. Yeah. Those very specific policies are all within the land use code. That we do have provisions on structured parking. I think we all acknowledge that the parking policies that we have in the land use code, they work for now, but I think council is interested in taking a look at it and further fine tuning it. Yeah. So that is one of the things we will be looking at in addition to everything else in that. But we're going to look at the whole thing, like just open it up and redo the whole thing. If it still holds true, we're going to keep it. But if it doesn't, if there's a way to optimize it, we're going to propose changing that too. And then for G4, managed street curbs, this is a new policy, and it's really an acknowledgement of a need to consider how our curbs are being used. This will be especially important as, for instance, as Central Issaquah grows. So an example could be a standard curb, if everything is parked out, if there's cars parking it, there becomes concerns about where deliveries would happen. I've seen it where delivery vehicles are parked where they should not be. It creates like concerns about safety or, sort of other ways, both for the driver and then if there's like line of sight issues. So it's really important to like manage curb space. It may not be important in some neighborhoods, but it could be more important in others where there's a lot of demand for it. So this statement, sort of like the other one, is saying consider managing street curb space and just sort of formalizing that as a statement. You obviously wouldn't want to manage it if it's not needed. It just doesn't really make any sense. So this sort of opens the door to ensuring that streets are operating efficiently through potential management solutions.
Sort of like those 3-minute parking signs.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one option. Yeah.
Delivery, like spot.
Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of needs for the curb, and if you have one solution for everything, it doesn't work well. So depending on the need, if there's a specific hotspot, we could look at that and say, this could be done better. Some examples that are like really easy include like, if there's 40 feet of curb and somebody's parked right in the middle, you could fit 2 cars in there, but like one person is just taking up 2 spots. Like that's like a real easy example of like, you could just, yeah, that would be like a good example of curb management, just boop.
Is there any like prescriptive, maybe it already exists, but like prescriptive rules about like how often you have to restripe parking spots? I know there is for like the lines on the road and stuff, but usually like the ones in front of my building are like really faded, and I don't, but that happens all the time where I think people just like don't see them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what our like maintenance schedule is for that. Yeah, I unfortunately don't know that information. Yeah, I do know that we're constantly paving all around town. Yeah, a specific treatment for like the example I was talking about would be like a pavement type thing, but then like if you're, yeah. Sorry, I don't know the specifics. Yeah.
Instead of painting the lines, I mean.
Yeah, like
pavement markings.
yeah, like you could do a couple options for that. Yeah, but yeah, there's like the curb itself, and then there's like street stuff too you could do. It's like sort of facilitating both of those.
Almost like an example is the library drop off where they have the curb cut. You want to park in there, people up in return votes and
Right.
Yeah.
just use just for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Didn't Bellevue just recently adopt some curb space management policy for their downtown?
I don't know. I can look into that. Yeah. There's a lot of really great examples. We would obviously, we don't want to like overmanage anything. So like we would want to do it for like where the actual issues are. But again, like we don't have any policy that talks about curb space. And it will be, or it currently is, an issue in certain areas. So I think it's a good way to think outside of just parking, but also like deliveries and like if there's short-term kind of things, just making sure that there's turnover so that there's a spot when you need it. Cool. So that brings us to the end of those. So feedback, I think we've gotten feedback along the way. I was talking a lot and I did not write all my notes down, but I will certainly review this recording and I will go through all the feedback. But I think we received a lot of good feedback thus far. Question for this group. So do the proposed goals and policies address Issaquah's transportation needs?
I think so.
We can go around and just talk about, the overall feedback. Start.
Well, I don't really have anything to add. It seems like this has already been pretty well thought out before we got it. So, but maybe if I was, maybe tomorrow when I'm out walking or something, think of something, but right now.
Yeah, and definitely, like, if you think of anything, let me know. I'm happy to record that if new information or new questions you have. I'm happy to field those as well too.
And the policies. I guess the question of this falls within the basic policies in the master plan, improve mobility within Issaquah, prepare for growth, better connect Issaquah with the region, with environmental sustainability, and environmental peace. Best wisely and anticipate transformation. I think a lot of these are the same ones that are in here, although they've been moved around a little bit and some clarifications of some. They all do still consistent. Mobility master.
Yeah, it's good information. My only concern that when it comes to the rate of growth that is recorded and the plans we're trying to accommodate that growth, I don't know if this is like fresh data or is it outdated. Like it's the rate of growth probably is much faster than the way we react. Yeah. So it's like we're always trying to catch growth. So, but yeah, very good information.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I don't have your arms flaring off or anything about this. I like the, like, I know it's little, like one word, but the changing was it stations to stops. I like that. I think that's really in line with the master mobility plan and making transit a more accessible option.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally this is a good set of policies. Of course, there's a couple of edits that should happen. Adding transit frequency on there and trying to clarify what we mean by supportive land use around the light rail station. Some really key issues there, and this should be something that we're trying to perceive in like 2040, what Issaquah needs in 2040, right? And so I do like, that we're trying to address some of our previous shortcomings when it comes to not adopting some of these micromobility options and trying to put this stuff into the plan so that we actually end up having to do it. And so, I think these policies generally have good foresight in terms of what Issaquah will need in 2040. Yeah, definitely some sharpening language, but overall it's good.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and just to add, we do regularly update these more than before 2044. So as the community grows or needs change, we will definitely look at this again. It is hard to say where we will be in 20 years. We have projections, we have ideas, but we are constantly looking at this and trying to update it accordingly based on the best knowledge that we have right now.
My perception or my idea is like, this, even if we can update it the next time in 2030 or 2032, right? I think that would be the next update.
The next required update, but we typically do it more often than that based on need. Yeah, that's just been the way that we've done it, because we don't want to wait 10 years to update this thing. It's just, that's sort of like the state requirement, but we're trying to do better than that.
I mean, there's just more plans and policies that that the city will have to end up trying to build out, and so it should be, it should have a policy with goals with foresight in this, before we have to keep updating. Yeah, that's my.
And then the last question, are there topics not being addressed?
So I'll put something out there. So I heard from one of my neighbors who's a teacher in elementary school, is there's declining enrollment in Issaquah. So there is a chance that Issaquah won't grow, because it's supposedly because of the housing prices. A lot of young families are not moving in to Issaquah right now. And so what has been happening is there's been a decrease in the number of elementary school children. So we really don't know if Issaquah is going to grow. Right.
She said the exact same thing, from 1,000 down to 700.
This is definitely happening all over the east side. Yeah.
Snoqualmie is growing because it's affordable. So there's school.
So Snoqualmie is, but then Bellevue had a decrease maybe 5 years before Issaquah did or something, right?
So I think things are always cyclical. So it may be 50 years, there'll be a resurge.
Right.
So when we look at this, we're still looking at 10 to 20 years out.
A lot of that is also the effects of the pandemic. A lot of students are being homeschooled. So while there is some attached to growth versus non-growth, it's also just students learning as well.
Yeah, you're right.
And towns just opened up, so I took a lot of draw from school. It came out the 9 months.
I want to throw something at the wall for this. I think it would be useful maybe to start thinking about safety policies around autonomous vehicles.
That's a good one.
What kind of vehicles?
Autonomous vehicles.
Self-driving.
Right. I think there should be some goal about setting some safety guidelines, or well, not safety guidelines, safety regulations around the use of autonomous vehicles within Issaquah, and companies who want to pilot their autonomous self-driving, their self-driving vehicles in Issaquah, if anyone does, but
Yeah.
it's still useful.
Sure.
To,
Yeah. Sure thing. Okay.
to have those safety regulations in place, so that we start thinking about that.
Okay.
But hopefully, before we get the self-driving vehicles, they've been tested pretty carefully.
I've
But
seen
that's a
it in
good
other
point.
parts of the country. Yeah, actively. Yeah. I think testing they're constantly reiterating over. Yeah. Cool. Any other topics that are not being addressed?
I know it's kind of like woven throughout in some ways, like T or it's like expanding transportation access to jobs, daily services for seniors, people with disabilities, low income folks. But is there initially, like my thought was just like because these are kind of chunked out into sections, right? Like, I guess quality of life is kind of underneath this, but like, just like accessibility, and then now I'm kind of shifting to like, well, is it just like overall kind of equity? Like, not seeing that as like a bucket in here, and I don't know if it's just because, oh, like, we did a good job of putting it within the other buckets, or, you know, it's just about what I had.
So sorry, could I get some
Yeah, I
clarification?
don't, well, I should be clear about that, because I don't really have it.
Is it kind of a concern about,
I guess it's not called out specifically,
yeah,
but I'm seeing, it is in some of like the individual policies.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I don't, but that's just a thought that I had, is that it's not there's no specific section for it, at least.
for equity?
Yeah, equity,
Okay.
or even just like accessibility. Yeah,
Yeah,
like the part that would include the, like, sure that like our sidewalks are more built out, curb cuts.
yeah, I guess sort of the line of thought is like, we're hoping that it's interwoven into, everything that we're doing. We want to build streets so that everybody can use it, so it's sort of like just an assumed thing that you would do already. We do have specific statements related to like complete streets, just that is policies that are in the land use code, that are, I think, in the street standards as well. This is sort of like, that's a requirement by the state, and like we want to do it anyways. But yeah, this one is sort of another general statement saying that we want to do it for specific types of groups, such as seniors, but also just like everybody in general. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's something to add to this, but the other thing that was just what you're, was emergency evacuations out of the city. Just to get this last summer being very dry. We have a forest fire on this side of California. The whole place. But if we do have an emergency like that, how do we turn our roads into evacuation routes for going either east or west or north?
Yeah.
That would be something that we would look at in the transportation policy, to have some sort of guidelines or a plan for that.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. That's our B2 right here. This is a new, so I think, we covered this right after talking about moving things to the environmental element. So this is a new state guidance, is that we need to think about evacuations, resiliency, all that. So this requirement is, or like this policy is specific to mapping transportation infrastructure and designated routes where like we would need those to be open or closed so that people can evacuate in those situations. That's a good thought. It's on everybody's mind right now. It's definitely something we want to look into, and we're hoping to like formalize that in here.
I will also add that Sammamish worked with a company recently to put together a formal report about evacuation routes and problem spots and all that. So the city's, especially Public Works, has been in active talks with that consultant to possibly partner with them or some other company. So those discussions are already occurring. So yes, okay, great.
Great. Do you have a couple more slides? This is just to sort of cap the night here. This is sort of what we're doing with the comprehensive plan in general. So we're at the bottom. This is the Transportation Advisory Board. Your feedback will be provided to the Planning Policy Board. There will be a public hearing through the Planning Policy Board, and then Council will adopt the comprehensive plan, which includes the transportation element. And so this is sort of the structure of like what we can expect with this project. So we're in the phase 2 engagement, talking about goals and policies. Again, PPC will do the public hearing. We think sometime early next year, we're then going to adopt the entire comprehensive plan, and then it'll be certified towards the end of the year. That's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thomas, we'll move on to reports now. The board work plan for the next few months. So just move next 1 month.
Okay. Thank you, Julian. Okay, so it's almost November. So next month, Thomas will be coming back to talk to us about transit plan, once again, looking at performance metrics. And then I will be bringing the new traffic calming program proposal before you, the rewritten policy. December, you have off. Okay. Oh, and November will be a special meeting. I think maybe Jerry, you mentioned that last meeting, I think. One of you.
Right, November.
So we moved that after
Wednesday,
Thanksgiving.
Wednesday after
Wednesday after Thanksgiving, yes. We will not meet or miss it. So yeah, it'll be the 5th week of the 5th, let's say, I guess, of November. Anyway, December, no tab. And then January, we're looking toward the future. We're just looking at what next year looks like still. So since we're a few months out from that.
So that'll be the 29th of November.
Yes. Make sure.
That sounds.
Yep, the 29th. Yeah.
I think we got a notice already.
Yes, I think I rescheduled it formally. So yeah, hopefully we'll have more information about January next month. But that concludes that report.
Thank you. And then we'll move to staff report.
Yes, a couple of things. Usually I'd have it right in front of me on here, but since we're I got an email this morning from John Mortensen. He wanted me to share a specific project that was part of the strategic small capital projects that you looked at, I think sometime in the last year or two. And he wanted me to share that our senior signal technician officially let us know that the East Lake Sammamish Trail and 56th over there, that cross, where the trail crosses 56 next to East Lake Sammamish Parkway. The modifications to that intersection are now done. It's very exciting. Those modifications included the installation of a no right on red sign when it comes up to the trail crossing. So if someone comes up to the trail crossing, no one, if that beacon is illuminated, then people have to stop and let the people go on the trail. I know, what a crazy idea. I love it. Along with that, the southbound dedicated right turn lane is now a flashing yellow right arrow that comes up when the southbound green is up and there is not a pedestrian. And when there is a pedestrian, the dedicated signal display now goes red with those no turn on right signs as well. So there's multiple different beacons that have been changed. It's very exciting. I remember being out at Bike Everywhere Day, I think not this year, but last year, and having bikers be like, I'm about to almost get hit, and then they would almost go and get hit, that kind of thing. So that's very exciting. And then the other thing, of course, is Metroflex launched almost 2 weeks ago now, last Monday. On Monday, we had a formal launch event that'll show up on YouTube, the YouTube page at some point. Thank you to Julian and Erica and Dave, who is not here. You all came out. It's on my phone. So thank you to 3 that came out. And yeah, it was a nice little event right before City Council on Monday. And I will hopefully have some data for you next month. I'm still waiting on our first week's data, and maybe we'll even have first month data next month for you. But it sounds like it's going very well. Heard a lot of anecdotal stories about people taking it. I went over to the senior center today, and one of the staff, or no, one of the members of the senior center was like, "Oh, one of my friends called me, and she needs to talk to you about the problems that she encountered." So she like got me on speakerphone, and I got to talk to her, and she was like, "I took it 3 times on Monday, and it went terribly, and then I took it yesterday, it was great." So there are bugs being worked out, but other than that, it sounds like it's pretty successful for the first couple of weeks. So anyway, I'll stop talking about it. It's all I think about these days. I don't think I have anything else for staff report.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
No chair reports and no youth reports, so
There will hopefully be a youth report next month.
hopefully.
So have you chosen?
We have, yeah, and we've recommended it to the mayor's office. I remembered it as we were sitting here, and I sent a reminder to the mayor's office asking, hey, what's the status? So hopefully the mayor will approve that by the time next month rolls around, and our youth representative will hopefully join us next month.
So would that be a primary and an alternate?
So we interviewed 2 youths. We wanted to propose the idea of having a primary and an alternate, but the way the city structured the offering out there, they were like, well, that's not what we asked. So we're only going to have the one, and then we invited the other one that we interviewed to apply next year. Of course, we'll promote it in the school district. So yeah, it's exciting. Glad to have that person start with us.
And his term will be for a full year, or is he
It's a 2-year term. Yeah.
2-year term?
So I think I'll bring him into his senior year, I think, is how it worked. Yeah.
Any other business or announcements?
Yeah, I just want to ask about the last meeting, public speaker, the comment or the complaint he was putting forward. How do we handle this? What's the next step?
Next step will be, so he is aware, I think Emily Moon talked to him. I don't know if Emily was able to follow up with that gentleman or not. Emily, if you're there, if you did get to talk to him afterwards, I'm not sure.
Hey, John, can you repeat that?
Haney was asking about, I can't remember his name. The gentleman who joined us for public comment last month. I believe you were going to follow up with him, possibly?
Yes, I think largely we were able to answer his questions. I gave him my card and asked him to call me if he had additional ones. He has not.
Okay.
Yeah, but the real question is,
What
will
do we do
the
next?
city be able to do anything?
Yeah.
Is it a priority?
So I guess behind the scenes, so he had originally called me a couple months ago. So, and I said, come and talk to Tad if you want to. So then he did. So next steps, I think, will be, I'm bringing the new traffic calming policy before you next month. That's the policy that affects his situation that he's addressing. And so hopefully we can get that adopted early next year, and then we can actually address the issue as the process will dictate. So yeah, it was great that we had an actual public commenter for once. It was great.
Is it possible to send him or like give him a heads up that we're covering that? Or
Yes.
no, that's not.
Yeah, he's aware.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
And so I'll make sure to make sure that he knows. I thought he was going to come and offer public comment when I brought it, so maybe I'll reach out to him and say, hey, November's the back.
Oh, I have so there seems to be traffic calming. There's a detour right now due to construction on Juniper Street. right across from Gilman Village. So then, right, so if you're driving north on Juniper Street, once you cross the bridge, then you make a right on this Second Avenue, there's the detour, because Juniper Street, they're putting in that new sidewalk. Right, on Juniper Street?
Yeah.
Okay, so then they have this detour, and they seem to have just installed traffic calming there. Is that temporary traffic
I am
calming?
not involved in that. That's, I believe, if it is, I think it is temporary. Do you, Emily, you know stuff.
I do. I know some stuff. This is a stuff I know. So yes, those traffic calming devices are temporary speed tables, speed cushions, speed humps. And I requested that our staff install those just for the construction project because it's a unique situation where we are actually taking traffic from a kind of mixed use commercial kind of collector street and forcing it into a residential area, which we try to avoid. But if you know the location and the geometry involved there, there wasn't another choice. So those will be removed after the project is completed.
Have the residents said, like, given any feedback, like, oh no, don't take them, or like?
I can't speak to what we may have heard from them so far, but they have been appreciative. I know this, I've heard that they're appreciative of having those devices there during the project and the signage and the communication from the city. So I'm very hopeful that they will recall that those will be removed. I fully expect we'll have requests, but they aren't the only neighborhood who has requested speed humps, and that's why it's really important for us to get a comprehensive, vetted, and approved policy so that we are using those where they're appropriate.
Agreed.
Thank you. Any other business or announcements?
No question. So I go back to Olympia temporarily during the week, January through just March this year. So I think January and February, I'll be down there. I should be back in this month of March. And am I still approved to join via Teams? Is that a Cynthia question? Is that do we re-vote on our rules every year? Like January.
So now that's a question. Let me think about, let me get back to you next month.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so I guess if we don't have any other announcements or business, we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:35. Thanks.
Thank you.